Hello, my name is Casey Keena. I'm a human resources professional, and today I'll be talking about a common issue in some workplaces, which are communication challenges between remote and in office employees. While these two groups work together towards the same goal and for the same company, they often develop different workplace cultures that affect how they connect and collaborate on certain projects. To explore this, I'm using communication accommodation theory. This theory explains how people adjust or don't adjust their communication styles when interacting with others, especially across group lines. It helps us understand the reason behind miscommunication and the social dynamics at play in the workplace. Communication accommodation theory, as described by Galloway, Oge, and Giles, isn't just about changing how we talk, it's about our identity, power, and group belonging. These ideas apply directly to remote and in office workers who often feel like they're part of different work environments. I'll be going over high context versus low context communication, in group, out group bias, power distance, and uncertainty avoidance. For high context versus low context communication, in office employees tend to use high context communications. So this would be similar to like quick chats, body language, hallway conversations, water cooler talk, meeting for lunch. Remote workers rely on low context communication, which would be anything that has to be like clearly detailed, intentional, and it has to be reaching out to those employees. So you really have to be at the forefront of like weekly wrap ups or any type of, intentional meetings, but also setting like clear and detailed goals for them. Communication accommodation theory helps explain why these styles often don't mesh. People that are in office and need that high context of like, oh, okay, look like they seem standoffish or they don't. Um, they're not adjusting their communication to match their coworker, and that's when it can get lost in translation because the remote workers are expecting clear, detailed, and intentional instructions, whereas like people in office can just take what they've heard or like, hey, can you do this for me? Those quick chats can make them go forward with the project that they're meant to complete. Another application to this theory is in group, out group bias. So, remote and in office workers can begin to see themselves as separate and put themselves in the thought of us versus them. Looking at in office staff, they're thinking that they're more connected, and then remote workers can feel excluded since it's like, oh, well, no, I told, so and so this after lunch, or hey, I saw them in the hallway, and the remote worker wasn't there for that interaction. So they feel more of that us versus them ideology of that in group versus out group bias. Um, the theory basically breaks down that people don't feel like the social and professional alignment. So, if you went out to work for, happy hour, then it's putting that in group at a priority versus the out group being the remote workers. For the power distance, it can come into play when in office employees have a more casual access to leadership and managers and supervisors, and it can be a quick conversation in the break room, or like I said, seeing someone at lunch. And remote workers don't have that, right? Like they have that distance from their supervisors and managers. Um, the power distance can make remote employees feel like they're not focused on, and that they're just, oh, well, I can give this to the person that I just had lunch with and we can go over it in person. Galloway and in the article, they note that power gaps can grow, and then people can feel disengaged from the communication rather than just adapting to what's changing, right? More touch bases with their supervisors. Their weekly wrap ups can be bi-weekly. They could do like a lunch and learn, like where they're learning about something that's happening in the office or anything that can happen from there. Another application would be like for uncertainty avoidance. Remote workers deal with more ambiguity about like expectations, performance, and then the tone of their emails because they're dealing with, once again, that communication being low context. They're dealing with it as far as it having to be clear, detailed, and intentional. Whereas they really read those emails and go over the instructions, this can lead to them often over communicating or double checking on, hey, this is what I thought from the email, or more of like back and forth on a follow up. They can always move to having like a video conference to help with this. Um, so the communication accommodation theory shows us that like this form of communication is an adaptation, so people have to like put in more effort to push through that uncertainty, so like following up with emails or trying to remove that tension that can be created from this, so that way they're in like that reciprocity of like, okay, I'm working towards accommodating this communication and everything like that. So communication accommodation theory can help bridge these type of roadblocks that you can have when having in-office versus remote employees. um, in conclusion, even within the same organization, the same groups, remote and in-office teams can experience communication very differently, and that can be seen across different platforms and just having to put a different lens on it. So the communication accommodation theory just shows us how we can adapt to the way people talk, and also trying to push through like that failure to communicate across these divides. Understanding the difference between in office and remote workers can help bridge that gap, and through HR, we can prioritize a more inclusive workplace culture. So, doing more collaborative engagements, doing things to make the remote employees feel value and not feel like they're just this, like, oh, well, we can give the project to the in office people versus the remote, but not undervaluing them and not making them feel unheard or any of those things. So, that can be helpful in like being more of a communicator towards the common goal of having a more inclusive workplace culture. And that's my presentation today on the communication accommodation theory. Thanks. Have a good one.